From the land of sky blue waters, welcome to the Sota Pod. Jaromír here, and I'll be joined by Seth Toupal here momentarily. And I thank you all for joining us wherever and whenever you are listening. What's happening, everybody? I know it's been, a week or so since we've released a podcast, and I apologize for that, ladies and gentlemen. We got some changes to our posting schedule, both on the audio side and the video side of the podcast, as we gear up and move into this 2024-2025 regular season, but more on that later in the show. Seth will be jumping on here in a moment, and we have a great jam-packed show here for you guys. Now, full disclosure, we recorded the episode a few days ago, so there's just a couple little things that I want to add to the podcast before we get into the segment with Seth. Now, funny enough, we were talking about the Yaroslav situation with the Nashville Predators, and Seth, being the guru that he is, suggested and made the case for the San Jose Sharks, and lo and behold, Askarov ends up being traded to the San Jose Sharks literally the day after we recorded the podcast. So I will get into that here in a moment and just outline that trade, because we speculate and talk about that situation before the trade in the recording, which you will hear in a moment. And because he kind of brought up the San Jose Sharks, and because we talked about Barry Trotz a little bit as well, I'm just going to leave all that in the podcast. So full disclosure there. And there's a couple other things that went down actually Saturday evening and Sunday morning that I want to just address as well. But before we get into that, I just want to give a big thanks to our friends at Northland Vodka, ladies and gentlemen. Northland Vodka is the best damn vodka in the state, the best damn vodka in the country, ladies and gentlemen, and they are an awesome local company here in Minnesota. Despite them being just a great vodka for whatever mixed drink, or hell, if you want to drink it straight, because yes, they are that good. It's that smooth and flavorful, where if you want to drink it straight like I did before the Metallica concert last weekend, it is definitely one of the better vodka options to do so. Cherry on top, a small percentage of every sale goes back into the community, goes back into local hockey. So what are you waiting for? Go pick you up some Northland today. Northland Vodka, a proud partner of the Sota Pod. All right, so like I said in the opening segment, Seth and I did talk about the Yaroslav Askarov situation on the podcast. So you're going to hear that in a little bit. And again, remember, we recorded the podcast, I believe, Thursday night or Friday morning, but nothing really else in the podcast segment, in the hockey segment of the podcast, is dated at all. So I just wanted to go over the trade here before you guys listen to that portion of the show. So Yaroslav Askarov was traded to the San Jose Sharks alongside Nolan Burke and a 2025 third round pick. Now, Nolan Burke, he was an overager OHL signing in his last year with the Sarnia Sting of the OHL in 2022-2023. In 56 games, he put up 82 points, where he had 50 goals, 32 assists, and 16 points in 15 playoff games, 8 goals, 8 assists. The year prior, he had 59 points in 64 games, putting up 34 goals. He played a whole season in the OJHL, Ontario's top junior A league, in 2018-2019. Had a cup of coffee with the Sarnia Sting, and then played 3 years, again, as an older player in the OJHL. First season, only putting up 10 points in 44 games, playing down the lineup, then getting an elevated role the next 2 years, and obviously as an overager, just absolutely dominating, playing alongside some solid players as well, most notably Ty Voigt, who had 105 points that year, setting him up for all the goals with 81 assists. He did play in the AHL and ECHL last year. Mind you, he only played one AHL game. He played mostly for the Atlanta Gladiators, where he had 15 points in 47 games. He is a center, undrafted guy. Maybe he makes the AHL eventually. He's 21 years of age, but anyways, a young guy going that direction to the Sharks as well. And of course, the stud goaltender, Yaroslav Askarov, who's 22 years of age, only played 2 games with the Nashville Predators last season, where he put up, tremendous numbers in that small sample size. 94 save percentage, 1.4 goals against. For the Milwaukee Admirals last year, he had a 911 save percentage, 2.39 goals against, 30-13 record in the AHL, and his save percentage didn't change between those 2 seasons he played down there, with a 911 save percentage. Now, the 3rd round pick that the San Jose Sharks received was actually the Avs' 3rd round pick that Nashville sent over. So actually, not that bad for the San Jose Sharks. Now, going over to the Nashville Predators here. Being moved again without even landing in North America was originally the Vegas Golden Knights' 1st round pick from 2023, David Edstrom. Also going over to the Nashville Predators was a 2025 1st round pick. Now, this pick is top 10 protected, which essentially means the San Jose Sharks will have either the choice of their own pick or that pick if it's in the top 10. The Nashville Predators also receive goaltender Magnus Krona. Now, Magnus Krona is 23 years of age, out of the University of Denver. Last year, he played some time with the ECHL, the AHL, mostly with the AHL, where he played 31 games and spent 9 games with the San Jose Sharks. Now, he got absolutely cooked with the San Jose Sharks, but let's be honest. Young goaltender right out of college, ECHL/AHL level, behind an absolute trash San Jose team. I don't necessarily judge him on those numbers. An 85 save percentage, 4.7 goals against average. I do think there's still potential for this young goaltender. Not necessarily to be maybe a top guy in the National Hockey League or even a guy in the National Hockey League, but surely a top guy in the AHL, where his numbers were a lot better playing for the San Jose Barracuda, where he played 31 games last year, 2 games in the ECHL, and again 9 games in the National Hockey League. He was a 5th round pick in 2018 by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Again, played 4 years for the University of Denver between 2019-20 and 2022-2023. So Nashville gets an AHL goaltender in return in a much better situation than he was in San Jose. And David Edstrom, by the way, again, has not played in North America yet at all. This is now the 3rd team he has been traded to. He's 19 years of age, out of Sweden. Last year played 44 games in the AHL for Frölunda, where he put up 19 points and 7 goals. And he played 14 playoff games as well, where he actually looked really good in the playoffs, putting up 6 points. He was the 32nd pick in the 1st round in the National Hockey League draft in 2023. A funny note about this, and an interesting note about this trade as well, is Edstrom and Vegas's 1st round pick, in which the San Jose used to acquire Askarov, those assets were actually traded to the San Jose Sharks when the San Jose Sharks traded Tomas Hertl to the Vegas Golden Knights. So, looking at it from a different perspective, the San Jose Sharks asset management has been pretty damn good here, as they were able to get rid of Hertl's contract and use those assets to basically acquire their goaltender of the future. Now, keyword future there, as the San Jose Sharks have 2 goaltenders that they're essentially going to go into the season with. So Askarov is probably going to play a chunk of the season for the Barracudas. He's still probably going to play a lot of the season in the AHL. However, where I think the situation is a lot better for him is he's going to be the starter there eventually. Like, if all things work out, and I imagine they will, he will be the Sharks goaltender of the future. Obviously going to get more reps this year with the team, and could honestly, out of the gate in training camp, play well enough to be Mackenzie Blackwood's backup and maybe play into a starting role there. What I'm trying to say is Jussi Saros is going to be the goaltender for the Nashville Predators for this next phase of this team competing, right? For the next few years. Whereas Askarov Blackwood could be the tandem of the future for like the near future, as this team comes out of the gutter and will essentially become something after this rebuild phase is over, right? New Jersey and Montreal were actually also interested in acquiring Askarov as well, but the Nashville Predators, who pulled the trigger way earlier than I thought Barry Trotz would have let this play out a little bit longer, but honestly, the return for him was damn good. You get a top forward prospect who the Nashville Predators can mold and develop now, since he hasn't even been in North America. He hasn't played any professional hockey in North America yet. They get a young goaltender in the AHL who kind of can replace Askarov. Now, can you replace an Askarov? No. I mean, look at this guy.
Win! And Yaroslav Askarov has pulled the net down upon himself and does push-ups. He does. He's bench pressing.
One of my favorite highlights of his of all time. Some might call it cheeky, but I love that shit, especially at the AHL level. Montreal, I think, would have probably had a better chance of acquiring him, given that he kind of fits their rebuild mold as well right now. Probably would have got the same type of reps and or chance to take over as the starter, kind of like now a situation is going to be in San Jose. New Jersey would have been a little bit more tough, in my opinion. But anyways, that is the trade, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, Seth and I talk a little bit about him asking to be traded in Nashville. I just wanted to record this prior to you guys listening to that portion of the podcast, because quite frankly, it was just a good conversation with Seth and I didn't want to edit it out. This episode of the Sota Pod is brought to you by BetterHelp. And look, ladies and gentlemen, everyone goes through ups and downs. Everyone goes through rough patches in life. And it's important to identify and stay true to your self-care routine. Whether that's leg day at the gym or therapy day. Is your schedule packed with summer activities for the kids, work that's keeping you inside versus enjoying the good weather? Or are all the boxes checked and you're confused as to why you're feeling down? Sometimes we can have everything in the world that makes us happy and we still don't feel right. Sometimes we need to talk about it with somebody and a shoulder to lean on. Therapy should be in those non-negotiable self-care routines if that's the case. And if you haven't talked to anybody before, if you haven't talked to a therapist and you're thinking about it now, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient and suitable to your schedule. So right off the bat, there's a stress lifted off your shoulder. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge if you feel like that person is not a fit for you. Just like those who use the gym for self-care, much like myself, never skip your run day, never skip your leg day, never skip your therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. Again, to get 10% off your first month here today. We're looking out for you guys. BetterHelp.com/THPN. Take advantage of our deal and start feeling better today with BetterHelp. Two other quick things I want to talk about here before we bring Seth on, as these two pieces of news landed on my desk Sunday evening. Before I dive into them, though, I just want to give a quick shout out to my friends at 7th Avenue Pizza, ladies and gentlemen. 7th Avenue Pizza will be at the first Minnesota Gophers football tailgate party, ladies and gentlemen, fueling you as we get ready to cheer on our Minnesota Golden Gophers. So make sure to check them out there. Go pay them a visit. Matt and the team at 7th Avenue Pizza are amazing. They're so awesome. They're a great local company. We love working with them. I love their product. I think their pizza is the best pizza on the planet. I'm never going to eat any other pizza again. I never have to eat any other pizza again because I found the greatest pizza on the planet, and that is 7th Avenue Pizza. They still have deals going on all summer, ladies and gentlemen. Hy-Vee, Jerry Foods, Lunds and Byerly. And if you are curious if they are stocked in the freezers on the shelves at your local grocery store, don't be shy to hit them up on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. They are totally interactive. They are totally responsive. And shoot, they're posting where they have deals all around the Twin Cities as well. Again, it's the best damn pizza on the planet, ladies and gentlemen. So what are you waiting for? Go support them if you're hitting up the Gophers' first football game at the tailgate party. Or if you're watching at home, make sure that that is your sports snack, sports meal of choice. As football season is just around the corner, hockey season is about to begin. Fuel yourself properly with our friends from Northland Vodka and a little 7th Avenue Pizza today. 7th Avenue Pizza, a proud partner of the Sota Pod. A couple other quick little notes before we get to Seth Toupal here and the meat on the bone in the extended hockey segment on this podcast. Seth and I talked about Jaromír Jágr training this offseason to play a full year of hockey with the team that he owns and manages in the Czech Republic. However, he's hit a lull with his off-season training, announcing in an Instagram post that he suffered a torn hamstring. He'll now be out for 3 to 6 weeks, adding that the injury was likely the result of, well, you guessed it, overtraining, which is something that Jaromír Jágr is known for. But the older that this guy gets, I mean, you have to train smart sometimes, not hard. The team physiotherapist Pavel Kolar warned him about this, and Jágr, being the absolute beauty and just crazy guy that he is, pretty much ignored him. In a quote translated by the Hockey News, Jágr said, "When I talked to my physiotherapist about the fact that I would like to properly train, he warned me not to do anything that my body's not used to. Of course, I didn't listen to him. I went for a run, not the sprints I used to do uphill, but normally straight. Or I put weights on and around my ankles, and I tore my hamstring." Now, Jágr was training with NHL players this offseason as well, going through their workout techniques, going through their regimens, going through all their tough workouts. And again, until him putting the weights back on running, he was seemingly fine. He was seemingly sharp. Now, again, he's a partial owner of Kladno and will now miss the team's remaining 4 preseason games and could be out for the start of the season, which does start on September 18th. Kladno has a game roughly every other day from there on out. That's actually a crazy schedule too for a league in the Czech Republic. Eating into Jágr's goal to play in every Extraliga game this season, which was his goal. It's crazy that and I'm just going to say, he's a Hall of Famer. I know he's not in the Hall of Fame yet because he's still actively playing hockey, but he's still been productive, mind you, not at the highest level in the National Hockey League anymore. Whereas out of shape last season, scored 18 points in 31 games. And especially being in shape this summer, didn't show any signs or doubt that he wasn't going to be productive, even in his 50s now before the injury. He does plan on continuing to play. He does plan on being a productive player for this team and helping this team win as soon as he can get back to full health. Another little quick bit here that maybe a lot of you who are listening from Minnesota probably don't care about, but just something interesting here. Former Calgary first round pick and Vancouver Canucks winger Sven Bärtschi has rejoined his WHL team, the Portland Winterhawks, as an assistant coach. Sven Bärtschi played with the Portland Winterhawks in 2010, between 2010 and 2012, where in 2 seasons amassed a boatload of points. 85 points in 66 games in his first season, 94 points in 47 games in his second season, and absolutely tore up the playoffs in his second season, putting up 34 points in 22 games. And coming out of Switzerland, going into the WHL, man, there was a reason he was picked 13th overall. Now, he never was really able to put it together in Calgary. He actually tore up the AHL, though, and when he eventually was traded to the Vancouver Canucks and given an opportunity there, he actually performed very, very well. Elusive skater, quick on his feet, goal-scoring player at the National Hockey League, and put up really good points, but was plagued by injury, which ultimately made him retire very, very early in his career. I mean, he put up points in seasons, and he never played an 82 game season with the Vancouver Canucks, but in like 68 games, he'd put up 18 goals, 35 points. In 53 games, 14 goals, 29 points. But again, those were the two pretty much biggest season. He played 69, 68, 53 games and was never able to play any more than that, even at the AHL level, where he only was able to play a season high 44 games after that. He did go back and play one more season in Sweden for Bern SC, where he played 36 games, only putting up 14 points in 2022, 2023. So it is cool to see him come back to North America and now help coach in the WHL, and seemingly has aspirations to go into coaching now, which would be cool to see Sven Bärtschi work his way back up to the National Hockey League level as a coach, as a foreign coach as well, coming out of Switzerland, despite him, well, really developing in North America, both as a teenager and as an adult. So we'll see how it plays out in junior. But again, for someone who played for the Vancouver Canucks, for a guy who I remember the Calgary Flames drafting out of junior, and for someone who follows the WHL so much, and honestly, more so back then, I'm rooting for the guy. And yeah, let's see how it works out in the WHL. Let's see if he works his way up the ladder, AHL, or shoot, maybe ECHL, AHL, and maybe an NHL bench role in his future. All right, let's bring on Seth Toupal here. Again, reminder, this was recorded a few days ago. I forget, it's been such a busy weekend, and I streamed literally 14 hours straight and streamed until 5. I think I started 10 a.m. Saturday and ended 5:30 a.m. on Sunday. So this episode is a few days, this recording is a few days late, but other than the Askarov stuff, there shouldn't be anything dated. But just wanted to remind you guys of that. Let's bring on Seth Toupal of Locked on Wild. Better late than never. Back with another hockey segment here with my friend and yours, Seth Toupal from Locked on Wild. How's it going, buddy?
Going good. Another week in the hopper here, getting us another week closer to the hockey season. I think I said on our recording of Locked on Wild, which we just did before recording this, that first preseason game is September 21st. So we are less than a month out.
Yeah. Sorry to everyone again. I know in the intro of the podcast I said that we were late, and I explained why this episode was late. But Sunday went to Five Finger Death Punch, Metallica, at US Bank Stadium, and I've been to a lot of concerts. Seth, I've been to more concerts than I can count. That was music. I won't say it was my thing. It still is my thing, but it really, really was my thing when I was younger, even more than sports. So I would go to every and all big bands that came through Vancouver, any small bands on Vancouver Island. When I was in Calgary, I was in Calgary for 2 years, and I saw everyone from Iron Maiden to Santana. I've seen them all. I'm a big Megadeth fan. I'm a big thrash metal fan. I'm a big Pantera fan. Can't say I'm the biggest Metallica fan, but when you have the opportunity to see Metallica, and honestly, Five Finger Death Punch as well, who put on an amazing performance, but when you have the opportunity to see them at US Bank Stadium for under $100, you grab that. And lucky for me that my roommate Joe, he works at a bar downtown, and shout out to the Underground Music Cafe, and the owner of that bar was working the show, and he upgraded us to club, and we got free food, and we were right near the bathrooms and bar. So it was I think I paid $50 with fees, $80 at most, and I've never seen a concert that big. Right, I've gone to BC Place in British Columbia, which I think is 60,000, but this was packed. Right, packed, probably closer to 70, maybe even 70 plus. So it was a great time. Had one too many wobbly pops to be able to record before and or after the concert. So, and then Monday I was recovering. The older I get, you need a whole day to recover, and it was a work day. So that is why the podcast is late.
I know the struggle all too well. You get to the point where one day becomes 2 days become 3. If you're anywhere beyond that, it's time to hang them up.
Yeah, but it was great. It was awesome. Totally worth it. But we're here now to talk hockey. And honestly, Seth, blessing in disguise, because if we would have recorded Sunday, we would have literally missed this busy off-season week of hockey news. So we will get to all the trades that have gone down this week, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, the Patrick Laine trade in particular. We will talk about some potential movement coming in Nashville. We will talk about a potential lawsuit that is looming over the NCAA. And of course, we will talk about the end result of the St. Louis Blues dishing out 2 offer sheets to Edmonton Oilers players, something I talked about without Seth because it happened the day after we recorded last week's episode. But let's start with 2 wild topics, because I know you guys are all hockey fans who are listening, but the reason you guys are here first and foremost to hear some wild talk. So we'll start off this segment with that. Let's go over again, Seth, your thoughts on the Sound the Foghorn and Sota Pod / Judge Buds prospect rankings for the Minnesota Wild. I know last week we went over like the lower tier ones.
Yeah.
Let's go over 25 to 15. And for all you who are listening right now, go back and listen to the last 2 episodes of Judd's Buds that really give like the full breakdown of our rankings. You can also check it out on YouTube. Every individual player, well, almost every individual player ranking and rundown will be posted on the YouTube channel as well. So Seth and I aren't necessarily going to be doing that full rundown again here. I'm just asking Seth, like we asked the boys on Sound the Foghorn, what do you think of our rankings, and would there be any changes upon looking at the list that I sent you now?
You know, the thing that I like about this chunk of the rankings that you guys did is this is where like the meat and potatoes of the defensive prospects are at. And we all know last year was a bit of a transition year for pretty much all of those guys. You know, Pionk, Parker, Ryan O'Rourke, Kyle Masters is probably the big one. You know, they just all those defensemen in Iowa just did not have a great season. But look, the thing that I keep going back to with that Iowa season or with that Iowa team, the guy that was expected to be able to show them the ropes and show them kind of where they needed to be, what they needed to do, and all that was on the Minnesota Wild roster pretty much the entire season. You know, you lose your captain, who's the one to show the whole team the way. And they just had to kind of fend for themselves for the majority of the season, which led to there were a lot of games in which the defense just didn't look really that great at all. But I think every one of them is capable of a big bounce back year this year. I've always been really high on Graham Clark. And so he, I think, is somebody who is going to be one of the quickest to get a chance at the NHL level. And so
I had him at 19. I had him at 19. Whereas he landed at 25 in the power rankings.
I'd probably put him higher, and I see kind of behind the scenes, I see that Justin Bakke had him at 15. I'd probably put him higher on this list, but you know, if we're going into like who has the best potential of this group to become the but that wasn't the criteria, right? And that's what I loved about this. We kind of had all of our own criteria going into it. And for me, it was just like, he might be a little bit older, but he's been the most dominant down there and he has the most pro experience. So obviously I'm going to rate him higher as someone who I think is going to be more successful as we're talking about them right now. And looking at when we did the end of the list up to the Graham Clark area, I kind of looked at it as like which players are the closest to NHL ready. And Graham Clark he's knocking at the door. Like, he is going to essentially be one of the first call-ups if somebody gets hurt.
Oh, yeah.
If not, depending on how he plays in the preseason, you know, there's a chance he could make the roster. I would say it's not as good of a chance as some of those other top-end guys, but he's still got a chance to make the roster, depending on how things play out. But then some of these other prospects in this area, I love Jack Pert, because I think, you look at the things that good defensemen have, and there's a lot to be said about the pedigree that they come from. And he is a guy who, played some really good hockey with St. Cloud State, played in a tough competitive conference, and getting a chance to see him at development camp, he just looks the part. He looks like an NHL defenseman. And so he's one that stands out to me. Obviously, the big one, the big wild card and the big question mark is going to be Charlie Stramel. And is he able to take a leap forward after a year in which he battled injuries? He didn't get a ton of chances to crack the top of the lineup with Wisconsin. Now he goes to a new place, Michigan State. New opportunity for him. I will say, getting a chance to see him at development camp too, he's starting to fill out that frame, which is a really good thing, a really promising thing for his development. And, there were other things off the ice that he dealt with too. He's still you never stop grieving a lost parent, like losing his dad. That's going to stick with him for the rest of his life. And it happens at a really key part of his development.
Yeah.
So obviously all that kind of factors in. And I just,
look what happened with Brock Besser at the NHL level. He lost his dad as well, dealing with a few injuries. And weird, that coincided with him not playing the best. You know what I mean?
It takes a toll. It takes a toll on anybody that it happens to. And so if he takes a leap forward, he's, I think, an intriguing, the most intriguing because of his size. If he adds good offensive repertoire to his game, you have a guy who could potentially give you something similar to what Joel Eriksson Ek already does. And that's valuable. If he figures it out and starts to take some really good steps forward, he's one that could really rise towards the top 10, if not into the top 10, depending on how this season goes.
Yeah. Pert came in at 17 in the power rankings. The Stramel actually came in at 16. What did I have them at? I think I had Pert at 16 and 17. I'd Pert at 16. I had Stramel at 17. There you go. And Stramel was what? 17, 18, all across the board. Hoppy had him a little bit higher.
Well, if he has a really good season, at Michigan State, I probably, if I were doing these rankings, I'd probably put him right outside the top 10.
He's going to either go up or way down. This is kind of his last chance. And on the show, we talked about this is the last year where we're going to be making, and I hate to say this based on what you just outlined there, because I think that is a great point, but this will be the last year that we find points / excuses for his play, right?
Yep. That's 100% right. Is now all of the things that seemingly could have been
factors
to point out lack of performance. He doesn't have to worry about cracking the lineup in Wisconsin because he's not in Wisconsin anymore.
Yeah.
He's
familiar with this coach now. He's going to fit in this system. It's
all those are out the window.
Yeah. Any other names on here that you want to talk about, guys, who you think maybe that you would have different from our rankings? And I'll just read them out right here. We had, and this is the power rankings. Graham Clark 25, Aaron Pioink 24, Kalen Parker 23, Reiner Work 21, Mikey Milne 22, Sebastian Sawini 20, Kyle Masters 19, Ryan Healy 17, Pertz 17, 16, 15.
Yeah, and it was
because of we had basically Pert and Healy both 17 there because we averaged everything out. But yeah. And Spotcheck came in at 15.
Yeah, Spotcheck is an intriguing one too. I would say at this point, slightly over Stramel and Pert doesn't bother me at all. But again, I'm going to be more intrigued to see what these rankings look like after all these guys get yet another year in the system.
Yeah. I was the one who had spot check the lowest. I had him at 22. Just because I think it's like high ceiling, low floor. And he did well. But I ain't buying into that Russo smoke, right? Russo, just because his relationship with his dad, I think, is pumping David Spacek up, way more than I think he deserves. Like, honestly, I think Kyle Masters is just as good or better. And I had Kyle Masters right around the same. Jack Pert, I think, is a better prospect. I had Jack Pert at 16. O'Rourke I had lower, but Z actually pointed out a great point that he actually played like a stupid amount, like 25 plus minutes, or I think it was like 20 to 24 minutes a night. It might have even been more. Like, he played a stupid amount of minutes a night and was leaned upon so much and had to do way more than a first or like a second year guy, a young guy would have to do. And he was given a lot of responsibility in the defensive zone, more than any of the other younger guys there. And putting that into perspective, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. The type of year that you had, you were getting burned a lot because you were out there more than anybody else on the back end.
Yeah, that can certainly explain, overuse can explain a dip in peripheral numbers for sure. That's why you got to have, look what happened with Brock Faber with the Minnesota Wild. That's why you got to have a bunch of guys that can spread the wealth a little bit, so you're not having to throw 30 minutes at one player every night. Yeah.
All right, well, there you go. Like I said, just wanted to get Seth's thoughts on our rankings here. It's going to be a lot of fun as we get closer to number 1 here for the next 2 episodes on the Sota Pod, to match like the timing of when the actual prospect ranking show come out, because I think there's 2 more that are coming out on the Judd's Buds feed and on the Sota Pod Judd's Buds episode, and then we'll get your thoughts after those 2 episodes are published as well, because I know once we get into the top 10, it's going to be either we're gonna agree on a lot, or you're gonna clown on me just like the boys did. All right. Another piece of wild news here I want to talk about with you, Seth. I mean, have you ever in the National Hockey League, other than with the Sedin brothers, seen a bromance as strong, as pure, as beautiful as that of Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello?
No, and there never will be one.
I've seen a lot of really tight line mates, really tight, friends, players on both the Minnesota Wild and just on other teams of the National Hockey League. Shoot, even in junior hockey, in my lifetime watching this amazing sport, I've never seen anything like this, ladies and gentlemen. Matt Zuccarello, as a lot of you might know, hosts a yearly charity hockey game in Norway, which I actually looked into a little bit more. It's really cool. It's NHL versus Elite Hockey Legion, which is the Norwegian Hockey League. So they do NHL players versus the Norway Hockey League players. And obviously they're not going like balls to the wall 100%, but it is a fun charity game. And we were talking about a fun charity game in the last episode as well. A lot of these guys getting involved in alumni games, charity games, and things like that in the summer. So Matt Zuccarello hosts one every year, which is awesome. He actually gives back to his community and the hockey community every year. And he has throughout his career, which is super cool. Kaprizov is one of the actually many Wild players to participate. However, he has to take a crazy path there, Seth. All right. Due to the ongoing geopolitical tensions with Russia, he can't just fly from Russia, from Moscow, right into Norway. Okay. This is his path. So he's flying Moscow to Istanbul. Istanbul to Sweden, but the only reason he can actually fly to Sweden is because he still has a valid Swedish work visa due to participating in the Global Series last year. So if he didn't participate in the NHL Global Series last year, he wouldn't even be allowed to go to Sweden. So he's going from Istanbul to Gothenburg because he still has a few months left on that Swedish work visa. And then instead of going from Gothenburg to Norway on a commercial or even private flight, he's going to fly in probably to the game, is what I heard. Like, to the game, like a motherfucking boss, by helicopter to Lillehammer. And he also, and they also said, and Russo commented on this as well, another reason why he's not probably going to go private or commercial from Gothenburg is like, just in case there's any issues leaving Sweden and going into Norway, he's just going to do private helicopter like a boss.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the thing that I always come back to, because, you know, a lot of fans get kind of leery when they see stuff like this, because we think back to all the trouble it took to get Kirill here when this all started. If the Wild had any reservations about this whatsoever,
they wouldn't let him go.
They would not allow him to go. Yeah.
No, for sure. I do know Brock Faber is going as well. Doesn't have to obviously jump through all those freaking hoops to get there.
There were quite a few Wild players, I think, that are
Philip Gustafsson, Jorgensen Ek, Brodin, Kevin Fiala's actually going, Matt Boldy, and Brock Faber. So all the boys. The only one that I'm sad is left off that list. Can you guess which one I'm a little sad? You don't have to overthink it. If you're just say it, I can just say it. But Brandon Duhaime. I would have loved to see Brandon Duhaime go over there. And honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised if his name was on there as well. I get it, not high level guy, but it's a fucking charity game, right?
Not a high level guy, but a high level vibe.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, dude. Oh my goodness. Speaking of like geopolitical issues right now, we won't get into this on this episode because I didn't research it enough, but I do want to tease it for next week. Pavel Datsyuk is supposed to be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame this year, right? In Toronto. He might have some issues coming into Canada. He recently went to an award ceremony for a Russian soldier who was actually fighting in this current Ukraine war. And the Ukrainian embassy in Canada has actually raised some alarm bells and is petitioning basically to deny his entry into Toronto to receive that award.
Yikes.
So again, I don't know how much pull they have. To be perfectly honest, I think Gary Bettman, the National Hockey League, even at that point, Hockey Canada and the Hockey Hall of Fame might all kind of just like pool together to be like, listen, we understand your concern and it's a valid concern. I get it. But like Pavel Datsyuk's still going to accept his award, but they're making, and again, they're making a big enough argument and raising alarms here that this is a story. So I quite frankly, I have to look into it a little bit more, but he might be, there is a chance that he might be accepting this award over Zoom.
Yikes. Well, they do that. Like, I've seen that happen in the major awards shows where it's obviously different with Hockey Hall of Fame, but I've seen where it's like, oh, such and such couldn't be here tonight. But, and since he's played in North America like before, and then I believe I want to say he was in North America recently for something. I don't know if it was in Canada though. It might have been in the United States. But again, that's me saying I didn't look into this story enough. But I feel like he was in North America recently, or was interviewed by North American media recently. But even more recent than that, right? At a Russian military award ceremony. Just go to the Minnesota-Canada border and just have him stand on one side of the... or just helicopter in. very viable.
Oh my goodness. All right, that's it for Wild Talk this week. I mean, you got anything else? You're more plugged in than I am. Hoppy has been on like the Gophers beat as of late. I don't know if people who listen to this have listened to the most recent episode of Fellowship of the Rink, but if you haven't, go check it out. Hoppy and Joe were recently at the Gophers alumni. I don't know if it was, I guess it was a golf tournament, and they sat down with a bunch of beauties and, current Gophers, former Gophers, and it was awesome. It was awesome. And I know, I think Hoppy now is credentialed for Gopher games, so he's going to be following them a little bit more this season. And with the return of NCAA, we will definitely be on the Gophers beat a lot more than we were this summer. I mean, college sports comes to a kind of a full stop in the summer anyways, compared to, the National Hockey League and even junior hockey, where there's a lot of, World Junior Camp, U18s and things like that, where you can kind of tie into, junior hockey narratives a little bit more. But no, that'll be fun. What are we going to be talking? What is my duty as far as prep for that show, Seth? What do you need me to prep?
I think what we'll do is, since you guys have been doing the prospect rankings, let's focus on that for that second hour of the show. Just kind of where different players are at. We'll probably talk about particular prospects and kind of their timetables and such.
Okay.
But since you guys have been throwing a ton of time into that rankings list,
too much time,
we'll make sure to spotlight it on Sunday. That's 12-3 at Zamboni's on 7th, right across
from the X.
Right across from the X. Can't miss it. It is, I should also mention this too, it is free to attend.
There you go.
So
there you go.
Stop by, say hi.
Can't wait for that. Yeah, that was an important piece of Wild related news we had to
100%.
We had to talk about as well. All right, let's talk about some other topics in the world of not just the National Hockey League, but hockey here, Seth. And this one, I got a lot to say on this, and I want to hear your opinion as well. Shoot, even my roommate and I were talking about this a little bit today, and it was just it's funny that it came up just in like a natural conversation. Him and I talk a lot of sports, and I was telling him, this is going to be a topic that's going to come up on the podcast as well. But Rylan Masterson is suing the NCAA. He filed a proposed class action lawsuit in the U.S. District Court in Buffalo. He's arguing that the NCAA is artificially suppressing compensation for players and artificially creating less competitive leagues. It is per se illegal under the antitrust laws, including because it constitutes a group of boycotts. Now, Rylan Masterson is suing the NCAA because he, despite being a junior A player playing for the GOJHL, but he didn't even play for the USHL, didn't even play for the BCHL, but in his hockey career, his young hockey career, his junior hockey career, he did play some games, 2 preseason games to be exact, in the OHL, and thus is ineligible to play in the NCAA, despite teams having interest in him, despite him having the opportunity to get a scholarship to play for these teams. His last season in the GOJHL, in 2023-2024, he had a respectable 39 points in 45 games. That is the Greater Ontario Hockey League. And this could open up a huge can of worms, Seth. This could cause a lot of change in the hockey world. So riddle me this, Seth. You can play pro hockey and come over to play NCAA, but you can't play any Canadian Hockey League hockey, WHL, OHL, or QMJHL, and come over to the NCAA. So Tom Willander, he is a first-round pick for the Vancouver Canucks, 11th overall in the 2022 draft. He played 2 SHL games last year for Rogel, and he was able to come over and play at Boston University last year, where he played 38 games, put up 25 points. Yet, if you even step on the ice for preseason games like Rylan Masterson did at 16 years of age, 16 going on 17 years of age, you won't be allowed to play in the NCAA. Now, one of the main reasons why the NCAA doesn't allow this, because they don't want, because the CHL, they don't necessarily pay players, but they give them a dividend. They give them an allowance per se of the ability to have like a billet family, food, and they don't give you money straight up, but you can accumulate a certain tier amount of payments to go to university / college whenever you want. Not necessarily to play hockey, but for example, Seth, if you play 1 year in the CHL, you get like, I think 1 or 2 semesters paid for by the league when you choose to go to college if you don't make the pros, or when you retire as a pro and you want to go to college, go to university, get a degree. If you've played and accumulated enough years, enough experience, enough games in the CHL, they will pay for that university. Because not everyone who plays full, 3-4 years in the CHL, dub again, O or Q, will be a pro hockey player. Some might pursue a career in pro hockey. Some might become a top player in the National Hockey League. But a lot of these guys will play a few years after, even before 30 or around 30, be like, okay, I need to do something else with my life. And they always have that in their back pocket. The NCAA doesn't like that either. So it just blows my mind that players like Tom Willander, who has played professional hockey, has played professional hockey. Again, it was only 2 games, but they were 2 real games, was allowed to come over and play in the NCAA. Whereas Rylan Masterson played 2 preseason games pretty much as like, I'm getting ready to play junior A, conditioning stint, I guess you could call it, and is not allowed to play in the NCAA. Furthermore, kids are getting paid in the NCAA now. NIL is a real thing. Now, I know it's way bigger in like football and basketball, whereas like, shoot, man, some people who are playing college football right now don't even need to go play NFL. A lot of them are electing to stay an extra year because of their sponsorship money. And, you're allowed to get sponsorship money in hockey as well. Furthermore, the NCAA is so stingent about quote-unquote payment that there was a goalie named Aku Kosenku for the Vancouver Canucks. He's Harvard's goalie, University of Harvard's goalie. He participated in the prospects camp this summer. Mm-hmm. He had to pay his entire way there. He had to pay for his stay and everything, because if he technically would have accepted a dime from the Vancouver Canucks, he would have lost his college eligibility. He would have been kicked off the team and kicked out of the NCAA. So this is just so ass backwards, right? Especially because players can get those NIL deals, sponsors, so they're actually making money. And in July 2024, the NCAA actually settled a class action lawsuit, obviously not this one, that is actually set to pay $2.75 billion to players who didn't receive NIL money between 2016 and 2020, now that the rule is allowed, right? Now that they're basically been given free reign and the rules have changed. So Masterson is looking to strike down the current bylaws and opening the door for CHL players not only to be able to join NCAA teams, but also the opposite, for NCAA players to be able to maybe go CHL route if their first 2 years, don't necessarily work out in college. So before, I know I've been kind of talking a little bit, laying down the groundwork for this. Before I get into how this might really shake up the hockey world, like, what are your thoughts on this? As I know we were talking about this story in our group chat as well.
This whole thing, ever since NIL came about, and look, I'm not advocating for or against. My main point is that once that door was opened, it feels like it's a dam that is just slowly starting to more and more take on water. And you've got, there are college football teams that have $80 million NIL funds to grab particular players. But, it just, from what you laid out, it just screams to me needing to have a uniform standard. Like a uniform standard of what constitutes what you can do, what you can't do. Everybody just needs to get on the same page, because you laid out those two different scenarios, preseason games versus like actual games. There's no reason that one player who performed in preseason, like exhibition games, should be punished, and the player who actually played for the team in games that mattered doesn't. Like, just put everything on a uniform standard. And look, if you want to have, as the NCAA, if you want to have rules that players can't play in regular season games with particular leagues, pro leagues, fine. But let's just get a consistent standard going here. So you're not, because this won't be the last. I'm sure there will be other instances of this going on. And so, like, they'd be doing themselves a service of just trying to get everything figured out and sorted out so there's not as much confusion. Yeah,
and there's just so many, like, ass backwards, rules to this. So if things change, and I think this is one of the reasons why there's been some pushback even from some of these junior A leagues. Like, if things change and there's a better relationship and, like you said, more uniformity between the CHL and the NCAA, well, some USHL, AJHL, BCHL, they won't be the only feeder leagues anymore. And look, for some of the big programs in the USHL, for some of the big programs in the AJHL, Brooks Bandits, for example, and Penticton Vs for the BCHL, like, they're not going to suffer. Sure, some of the smaller teams might suffer in getting recruits, but at the end of the day, like, those teams aren't going to suffer because they're in small towns, and those small town fans are going to support that team because that's their quote unquote NHL team, right? Like, that is their team. I can speak on that growing up in multiple BCHL markets. I love the BCHL so much. I think it's a tremendous league. And as a kid, they were my NHL players before I moved to towns that had WHL team. And, those junior teams were my NHL players, right? Those are the guys that I looked at as like stars, as the famous, athletes growing up.
Yeah.
And I mean, junior A and WHL, like, it's a family fan base, right? That's where you take the kids, and things like that. Not to say that I didn't have a fun time going to those games in college either. I was spoiled to grow up in towns that had both BCHL on Friday nights and then WHL on Saturday nights, but still. However, the change would give guys the opportunity to move between leagues or test themselves in college, which I think is awesome. Now, this would also affect the NHL, Seth, because there's some NHL rules around both the NCAA and the WHL. And we were, this is so perfect to tie it into Minnesota Wild and talking about, Riley Heidt, right? People who leave college, they can play in the AHL, right? However, if you play, and that's what, like 2 years of college, right? If you play 2 years in the CHL, I know you're a little bit younger, 17, 18 usually. If you don't make the NHL team until you're 20, you can't play in the AHL. You have to go back to junior. So, and another thing, CHL signings, right? CHL draftees, I should say. If they don't sign with the NHL only has their rights for 2 years. Whereas NCAA players who don't sign with the NHL but drafted the NHL team has their rights for 4 years. Once you sign a contract in college, though, you can play pro. Leaving college, once you sign with your NHL team, you can't go back to college. You can play pro. If you sign a deal, that's where the Riley Heidt situation is. He has an opportunity to make the Minnesota Wild, but if he doesn't, he can't go to the AHL due to this stupid rule. He has to go back to the CHL. So like you said, also CHL players under 20 cannot play in the AHL. If NCAA players turn pro before 20, they can play in the AHL. This would also allow flexibility to participating in NHL training camps, as I talked about with that kid in Vancouver. He can't actually play in a normal NHL training camp because that would be a pro training camp, and he would have to sign his NHL contract to do so. but he can go play prospect training camp because the NHL isn't paying him anything. He's going there on his own dime, basically signing up to be just an extra body there, right? To kind of skirt through the rules. It's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. And this could potentially be a long process, but I think change might be upon us due to Masterson not really backing down and being one to really go for it here in challenging the NCAA in this lawsuit. Also because like he's kind of playing with house money, so to speak. Now he's going to spend a lot of money on this lawsuit, but it's not like he is a top prospect coming out of the BCHL, you know, a first-class recruit or anything like that. Like he clearly had interest from college teams because he's a good player. But again, the Greater Ontario Hockey League is not one of the top junior A leagues. BCHL, USHL, miles above it. Shoot, even the AJHL, miles above it. But the fact that like he went that route to go to college versus trying to stay with the Windsor Spitfire, which was the OHL team that he did play those 2 preseason games in when he was against, 16, 17 year. I feel like he's going to fight this until the end. And honestly, there's been a lot of people clamoring for change and to just have a little bit of a better relationship between these 2 huge hockey organizations, these 2 huge young athlete organizations. And my only thing, and then I'll hand it over to you, Seth, here before we wrap up this segment. But my only thing is, I am down with them just opening up the doors, right? And being like, college players, if you played 2 years or a year and this is not for you, you can go to the CHL, BCHL. You want to go to WHL after, go right ahead, etc. Like open up more portals of transfer, not transfer portals, but portals of transfer for these guys in this stage of their development. My only little caveat would be, if you're an overager in the CHL, usually that means you've probably played 3 to 4 years, maybe even 5 years. If you're 20, 21, I would say that like that's the year where it's the cap where you can't go college. I would say like you have between 18 and 20 to be able to make that decision to transfer to college, because usually people are playing 17, 18, 19, 20 in the CHL. And a lot of these guys, you still might want your college experience. And so that's my only thing is like cap it at 20 years of age for transferring from CHL to NCAA. But other than that, open it wide up, man. All right. What are your thoughts on this before we close up?
Well, it feels like that's the route that we're headed is, I'm sure that these entities wanted to try to control the flow of this when all this first started to happen, but there's just too much. There's just too much to try to control and to curb. And I think if you can put some guidelines down just in general, that this process will be way more smooth and you'll eliminate instances like this, because like you said, he's got every reason to try to fight this all the way through. And if he wins, then that'll be one that they look back on years from now and say that was kind of the first gear that really got everything going.
Yeah. And I know there's going to be some pushback on, like, for example, the Riley Heights situation now, and where once NCAA guys sign with an NHL team, it's like, okay, you can't go back to college. It's pro now, even if you're under 20. Whereas in the CHL, every player would want to sign, because then, okay, sweet, I can actually get paid pro money now, not this, small little bit that the CHL is paying us. Every team that's not London Knights is actually not really paying us money at all, because London Knights paying these guys basically NIL money, let's be perfectly honest. So I get why that's there, because the CHL would lose a lot of guys, because there's, oh, fuck, I'm going to go ECHL, I'm going to go Sweden, I'm going to go Liga, whatever, right? AHL, because I can be paid now. But I think there needs to be some sort of, like you said, clause, or exception is the wrong word, but let's say if you're a 17 and 18-year-old and you put up back-to-back 100-point seasons, or if you put up 100 points by the time you're 18, I think that there should be like a level of production where it's like, okay, you are in, some sort of exceptional status to be able to play pro and sign and actually fulfill that 2-way contract that you've signed.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this all plays out. It's a lot to take in. Like,
I
there
know it was
just
so
are
much that I was like losing my train of thought too because I have so many notes on it. And you know what? And if that clause is actually, and I think that's the only way to kind of solve that issue of like all these dub and OHL guys who put up good points, not like good seasons, not just like obviously signing, but not electing just to go to the AHL instead of having to go back to junior. You put like a high bar where like the bar that Riley Heidt back to back, or I know it wasn't quite back to back 100-point season, but 17-18 year put up the year he did now. Okay, that checks a box where like you are good enough to be able to actually play pro under the contract that you signed. And as I drop the mic here, we move on to the next segment. This might sink the fucking QMJHL because everybody puts 100 points up in that trash league. So there you go. There you go. Oh man. We'll continue to monitor this because this is huge. And again, as a junior hockey fan, now getting more and more into NCAA, I want to see change. I want to see change for every single reason that we outlined there. Why are pro players overseas able to play in the NCAA? Why are guys who are currently playing in the NCAA basically not allowed to play training camp or to come and play in training camps and actually get a feel for where they're going to play? And why aren't guys like Heidt able to actually play pro when they're ready and who aren't going to abuse the system, right? So excited to see where this goes. And shout out to Rylan Masterson for just going at it here. All right, let's talk about some NHL trades here. The biggest one being Patrik Laine. Patrik Laine, acquired by the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Columbus Blue Jackets receive a great young defenseman in Jordan Herring, and also give up a second round pick, which they send over to Montreal. So Columbus gets Jordan Herring. They give up a second round pick and Patrik Laine. The reason they gave a second round pick, though, is because Montreal obtained the entire contract. The Columbus Blue Jackets did not have to retain any money on Patrik Laine's contract. And you know what? I think that's fair compensation for that. Thoughts on the trade here before I ask you a couple questions?
Well, that's 100% why, because of the amount of money that contract entailed. That's what you got to do. A lot of times is you have to entice a team to take that contract on. And Laine, I think the Canadians obviously view Laine as more than just like a throwaway. Like, they want him to be a key piece of what they're building going forward. But it was interesting as this was unfolding that you heard Don Waddell talk about, like, you know, we're trying, we're doing our best to kind of figure out what we can do to accommodate his trade request, Laine's trade request. But I think the reason that it took as long as it did was because of the contract. And for Montreal, a young team like them, why not? Like, if you certainly aren't in any sort of financial hardship to not be able to make this work. And he's a guy that, you know, if he's going and he's healthy, he is a definite top 6 player that they can throw into their mix with, you know, Cole Caulfield. Almost said Cale Makar, jeepers. Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, you know, you throw him in, and
Alex Newhook too.
Alex Newhook. That's a piece that could really help them out. And that's the reason the Wild weren't able to get this done was because of the money. Like, there just was no way to make that money work.
Well, and they don't even have the spot for him either. If they're really going to
the
give some of these young guys a chance, like again, like we talked about it. I think we were very realistic and went down like every single path of like a possibility and every single path of why it wouldn't be good for the Wild. And like, we ultimately came to the same conclusion. It wasn't even worth going down that path. Like, obviously they might've inquired, but like, and I don't know if Patrik Laine would have wanted to come here anyways. Let's be perfectly honest. Like,
yeah. If the Wild, like 2-3 years from now, have started to identify their, like, okay, we're starting the run, we're whatever the time frame is, and a Patrick Laine type player is available at that point, that's when that makes sense.
Yeah, this wasn't the right time. The right time. I know, and you hinted at this as well. I know the Montreal Canadiens general manager has said, Ken Hughes has said that like we really want Laine and we brought him in to be another core piece. He's obviously the highest paid player coming into the team and now. But Ken Hughes has been crafty the way he's been flipping big players with big contracts recently. I mean, there's only 2 years left on Laine's contract. Do you see the potential of him being flipped next year if he comes out of the gate just on fire? And maybe even like maybe even at the trade deadline or leading up to the trade deadline, he already has 20 plus, maybe even 30 goals at that point. Do you think we see another situation like we did with Sean Monahan? Because Laine does have an opportunity and the ability to be a staple on this team, especially because like the Montreal Canadiens, they do need one of their power play units to be filled out, right? Right now, even it's like right now it's clearly their second unit, but if Laine starts buzzing, it could become their first unit, and their first unit from last year could become their second unit. So there's definitely holes to be filled on this team in the scoring department. And their goal is to make the playoffs. Like they said it, we have a young core here. We do know that there's going to be still some growing pains, but they want to make the playoffs. And they think that their young core can take that step to be a competitive team in the East this year. And Laine clearly can help them attain that. So do you think that there's a possibility, though, that Kent Hughes either, and this is assuming Laine plays well, finds a dance partner for him, because there's only 1 year left on the contract and they might be able to eat some of that, right? To be able to further get assets or get maybe, I don't know if there's a better piece, but you know what I mean, a more fitting piece. Do you think that Ken Hughes has that in his back pocket?
That would be the prudent way to handle this, because like Montreal, they've been saying, you know, we brought him in, we want him to be a part of this mix going forward. But the only guy that can make that happen is Patrick Laine.
Yeah.
Like if he wants to stay, then there are easy ways to make that happen. But if not, you're foolish, frankly, if you don't next year, because, you know, Montreal is a team that I think they're starting to, you know, they're on the right track. But if they're not quite there next year and you get towards the trade deadline and you can retain, there will 100% be teams that will be intrigued by that. And for Montreal, you're retaining for basically the rest of the season, and that's it. So it's not a huge commitment for them. The fact that they got a second round pick with this too makes it a no-brainer. Awesome. But there 100% should be, if they're not in it next year, there should be another. They should look to trade him again.
Yeah, that's the thing. You said it's on Laine, but it's if Laine performs well, like at the start of this season or just this year leading up to the trade deadline or even just halfway through the season, I think it's still up in the air on what Montreal do with him, because then they have that choice. Okay, he's good this year. He has been streaky in the past. Do we keep him or do we flip him at the highest value that he's been at in a long time?
Yeah. And
then we only have 1 year to retain, right? Because there's only 1 more year left on his contract after this year. So I think it's on Laine either way. Like to not be moved again, I don't think has any correlation with him playing well. I just think he just has to play well regardless, right? Or else he's not going to sign another big ticket. But I guess it all depends on how he meshes. If he meshes well with these guys and really, really shows and tells the team that, like, I want to be here and win with you guys throughout this development, because he's only 26 years of age, then I think the team is more inclined to just, okay, we're going to keep you at least for another year here. But if he's just kind of playing well, but going through the motion, still kind of snarky to the Canadian media and the savage Quebec media, then maybe they're just like, okay. And again, we're not going to see everything on the outside, but if there are any inklings of like, okay, he's not bought into being a Canadien, being a Montreal Canadian, and being with this core, but still playing well, then we can trade him. So
it's like a date.
Yeah. It's just very interesting that
Montreal and Patrick Laine are dating.
Yeah, because it's very interesting. That's because, like, even if he plays outstanding, there's still a possibility of him being moved this year, which is crazy to think about. But obviously, you want him to play good because we're all kind of rooting for his comeback. But yeah, it's unlike Dubois, whereas like when Dubois wasn't playing good, they're shipping him out of town. Here, it's like no one's going to take him until next year, in my opinion, if he's not playing good.
Yeah.
But this year, we're talking about like they're not going to be able to flip him like they did with Monahan if he doesn't play well. He has to play well. But also, they might keep him if he plays well. So it's a very curious and interesting situation that he's in right now.
And it's very open-ended.
Yeah.
And it'll all depend entirely on how he does and how the team does. Like, if they take off, they're going to try to keep him around.
Yeah.
If not, then they'll look to get something back for him. Not this trade deadline, but the one after. They'll try to get, or even in the offseason too, between the 2 years.
Yeah.
They'll try to snag something in return for his services.
Jordan Harrison, a great defenseman. I think, Columbus, they did get a good piece in this. They had to give up the second, like I said, for the contract there. And obviously Jordan Harris isn't max value for Patrick Laine a couple years ago, but Patrick Laine hasn't been playing like the same Patrick Laine in his first 3 seasons in the National Hockey League. So I think Jordan Harris is a fine piece to get in return. Great Northeastern player, and made the Montreal Canadiens team right out of college, and has played already over 100 games in the National Hockey League. So I do like that piece. And Don Waddell said, this is actually interesting. Don Waddell said that the Canadiens were the only team willing to take on the full contract. So like he was offering picks to other teams as well. And the Canadiens were the only team to take that second as compensation for the whole contract.
Chess, not checkers.
Yeah. Well, that just also leads me to believe that Kent Hughes has has that I can work my flip magic. He's got that in his back pocket. He's got that up his sleeve. Laine was quoted saying, "I'm happier than ever off the ice and done a lot of work on myself to get back to this point where I'm actually super excited about playing in a new place with new players in a new city. Good time to put everything that I've learned throughout my National Hockey League career and personally to the test." And oh boy, is it going to be put to the test in that Montreal Canadiens market, Original Six market, and arguably, outside of Toronto and New York, the third, maybe even second biggest hockey market on the planet.
Yeah, it'll be that Montreal team could be interesting. If they need to take a little bit of a step, if they do, look out.
Look out indeed. All right, let's talk about the Nashville Predators a little bit here, Seth. Yaroslav Askarov has told Barry Trotz and the brass in Nashville that he will not be reporting to camp now that Saros has been signed and extended. Askarov is not happy with his place in the depth chart now that Scott Wedgwood and Saros have been signed, extended, and they are going to be the 1 and 2 on this Nashville Predators team. Basically, the Scott Wedgwood signing blocked his spot to be the 1B and backup to the Nashville Predators. He's 22 years of age and showed signs that he's the real deal and he's ready to be an NHL goaltender. This upcoming year will be his 3rd year in the AHL if he plays in the AHL, but he's made it very clear to Nashville that I am not reporting to Milwaukee, and furthermore, I'm not even going to report to your training camp in Nashville. I want to be traded because there's clearly no path to the NHL through this franchise. He's in the final year of his rookie deal as well, so it's not going to break the bank for a dance partner if Barry Trotz and the Nashville Predators do find someone to trade him to this season, but likely there will have to be like a sign and then extend him right away and bring him into the NHL because that's where he wants to be, and deservingly so. He's been one of the best AHL goaltenders. I know Minnesota Wild market, we're talking about Wallstat, but dude, Askarov is unbelievable as well. And again, similar age, very early 20s. And he was a first-round pick who actually even went higher than Wallstedt in the draft, his year being 2020. Now, Barry Trotz, Seth, fucking based, dude.
God,
and this is why I love Barry Trotz.
Much.
He was quoted saying, "We are aware of the report today, and our expectation is for the player to report to training camp and compete for a job in September. Our players compete. Players who want to be here. Nashville Predators compete." Barry Trotz also said that he's in no rush to move anybody who tries to strong-arm him, and that if he doesn't find the proper trade, if this kid A doesn't report to Milwaukee or Nashville, and there's no trade partner early, Askarov's not going to force his hand, and he's not going to make a panic trade. This kid can wait. This kid cannot play this year and bring his trade value maybe down a bit, but he really doesn't care. He's like, I'm not going to be strong-armed here. And I honestly don't think realistically it's going to bring his trade value down. If anything, the trade value might stay there, but the team getting him is not going to get a fresh player because he's going to be sitting on the fucking bench or sitting at home watching hockey versus playing. Well, and keep in mind, he's going to get a damn good, return in this trade.
You know, I was thinking when I did my Tuesday episode of the Locked On NHL show that I co-host with the Locked On Sharks host, we both talked. We're like, this makes a ton of sense for the San Jose Sharks. Like, look at how much they have waded through the retread goalie marshes over the last couple of seasons. And it's a Sharks team that has, because the thing that you gotta keep in mind if Nashville does make this trade, what is going to help them most right now? Not necessarily prospects, because they're in win now mode, not necessarily draft picks. Players that are capable of playing and making an impact right now. And Nashville has, or San Jose has a handful of those guys that could come in and play for Nashville right now. I'm telling you, it would make a ton of sense for the Sharks to try to get in on this. But you look at Barry Trotz's position on this. What does he care? He's got UC Saros. He's got UC Saros locked up for a long time, longer even than Askarov is going to be around. And so at this point, he's got his team. He's focused on this upcoming season. But I love the add in there too of basically turning this around on Askarov, saying like, "Oh, you don't think you can beat out Scott Wedgwood?
Come prove it." Yeah.
It's just. I wish there was more of this. We got a little taste of it with Bill Guerin when Cam Talbot's wife got upset about the Marc-Andre Fleury timeshare. And his agent was basically saying like, well, you know, we would like to see this resolved in some way to make both sides happy. And Guerin's like, I don't have to do anything. Like, what are you talking about? I wish there was a little more of that.
And I know like it's the Nashville Predators way to, just like we saw with Pekka Rinne and UC Saros, to have that 1A star kind of split time as they go on in their career with the new guy, with the replacement who's going to become the star. And we saw that. We're like, they went from Rinne to Saros, dude. Like, talk about like star goalie to star goalie, and Askarov just doesn't want to play that game. And clearly they thought, you know what? We don't think you're necessarily ready, despite you being a star in the AHL. You're only 22 years of age. You don't get to dictate the shots right now. And he wants to. And in fairness, he's put up 2 tremendous seasons in the AHL, so he has all the right to ask for that, right? But Barry Trotz, they clearly are like, no, we're gonna go with an established, backup who can play 30 plus games. And I'm sure the hope for Barry Trotz and co was that Askarov would be their call-up option for injury, but he doesn't want to play ball, so Barry Trotz doesn't have to play ball with him and can be like, all right, you don't want to come to camp? You don't, like you said, you don't think you can get Scott Wedgwood's spot? then fine. I'm going to sit back here, relax, and I will make the move on my time, sir, not on your time. And you might be sitting out a good chunk of the season, which again, I don't think, Seth. I've read, and that's why I brought it up when I was talking about this, that might devalue him a little bit. I personally don't think it's going to devalue him at all. But what it will do is wherever he signs next, he's not going to be fresh. So win-win for Nashville. They kind of, subtly screw team a little bit, getting this guy like right out of a camp, ready to go, or with some games under his belt, fresh, and they're going to get a great return.
Common Barry Trotz W.
He's so awesome. He's so awesome. Folks, we just want to take this quick break to tell you about our friends at DraftKings. Know the beautiful thing about being a sports fan? There's only like 2 days out of the entire year without a game. 2! With so much happening and so much action that makes just about every day game day at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's super easy for first timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, place your first bet. It really couldn't be easier or any simpler. And if you're new to DraftKings, you gotta check this out. New customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. So what are you waiting for? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after insurance. Deposit eligibility restrictions apply. See terms and responsible gambling resources at dkng.co/base. Now back to the show. We have some more trades to talk about here. Some trades that went down this week, Seth. So let me just bring this up on screen, and we'll end off the show talking about the crescendo that was the St. Louis Blues and Edmonton Oilers offer sheets. And some of these trades occurred because of the Edmonton Oilers not matching Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway's contracts that the St. Louis Blues offered. More on that in a sec. But some trades, and some have even came on our desk here today. The Pittsburgh Penguins acquire McGroarty from the Winnipeg Jets for Brayden Yager. I personally think, and I talked to Hoppy a little bit here today as well, I personally think that this one's just a case of, the Pittsburgh Penguins are in or continue to be in win now mode. Until Malkin and Crosby retire, they're not going to rebuild. So Brayden Yager is still a year or two out from playing in the National Hockey League. He's got all the talent in the world, but he's coming right from the WHL, a WHL championship, if I might ask. And I don't know, I don't think it was a Memorial Cup, but a WHL championship. And Rutger McGroarty, coming right out of college, is more NHL ready right now. And I think the Pittsburgh Penguins want to put him right into the lineup, where they didn't necessarily want to wait for Brayden Yager, despite both of them having incredible upside. Both of them, if you look at trade value, are probably the same.
Yeah, you're correct, I think, in that McGroarty, because there were rumors all up to the NHL draft. And, if not for Zeev Buium falling to the Minnesota Wild, I think from what I heard, it was that was the route that the Wild were going to go, was to get Rutger McGroarty. Because he's right, he's going to be able to come right in and help out right now. But the interesting thing too is, he signed his ELC for 3 years, and so depending on the countdown clock for Sidney Crosby and the rest of that core for the Penguins, if McGroarty plays well, he may be part of those pieces of the post Crosby era that you also have at your disposal. if his tenure with Pittsburgh, at least on this first ELC, goes well.
Yeah, and if Winnipeg wasn't just stacked up front, if they and they're arguably more stacked up front than the Minnesota Wild right now, but in like that same situation, there's just no spots for him, and that's why he asked for that trade.
Yep, we saw it with Jack McBain and the Minnesota Wild, in that didn't view that there was a good opportunity to crack the Minnesota Wild roster, and so said, "Yeah, I would like to go elsewhere," and went to Arizona, now Utah. And ironically for him, he's playing like a fourth line role with that Utah team. So good luck, I guess. But this kind of stuff happens. Is teams draft players, but players may have a different idea as to where they fit best. And so then at that point, it's just a matter of, well, if they're not going to play here, we're going to send them somewhere else, and we're going to try to get a good return. And
again, he's NHL ready. He fairly didn't want to play for the Moose. And so he wanted to go to a team where there's going to be an opportunity to play. And Pittsburgh is going to be that team, because Pittsburgh needs some young talent. They need some firepower. They need some hope right now. And it's crazy for me to say that, because you got a Sidney Crosby who's still putting up, 80 to 100 points in that realm. But they're getting older. And shoot, they missed the playoffs last year, right? So they need a little something. Brayden Yager wasn't going to play on the team this year. Brayden Yager, like you see here, put up 95 points last year with Moose Jaw, which was a stacked team. They won the WHL championship, but he might go back to the WHL. Because he's still 19. I don't know if he's turning 20 or not, but he's either going back to the WHL or he's going to turn 20 and play in the AHL. I just don't think he's quite at McGroarty's development level just yet. McGroarty being a year older than him as well.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how McGroarty does, how his path kind of unfolds, because that Pittsburgh team, they still, like you said, they've got a lot of good pieces, starting to get a little up there in the age column, and so he could be a piece that can kind of inject some energy and some life back in.
This one just makes me laugh because the St. Louis Blues have to clear a little cap now and say thank you, Edmonton.
They're like,
thank you.
We're sorry for being incredibly petty. And so here's a little something for your troubles.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Unbelievable. We talked about obviously the Montreal Canadiens and Columbus Blue Jackets. The Edmonton Oilers dumped the Cody Ceci contract to the San Jose Sharks and give the San Jose Sharks a third-round pick for taking on the contract. They get Ty Emberson in return. Not much value coming back for the Edmonton Oilers.
No, but on the Sharks side, I like this because Ceci's a veteran player. Ironically, in looking at the Sharks roster, they are more veteran laden on defense than they are on offense. But you bring in a veteran guy who's got a little bit of a different perspective from just being with Edmonton on their run to the Cup final. But if he performs well, they can flip him at the deadline to a team looking for back-end defensive help, and can get assets in return. And I think for teams that are trying to get their way back up, especially the San Jose Sharks, I think as many times as they can do this as possible, it's worth it every time. Yeah. You've got no shortage of prospects. And so if you have a guy in Ceci that plays well till the trade deadline, then you trade him. You just have somebody fill his spot, but you get, and it may not be a substantial pick back in return, but you get something because another team wanted him to help on their playoff run, and then you've got more assets in your cupboard.
Yeah, absolutely. God, this next one hurts my soul. Mostly just because it's another failed first-round pick from the Vancouver Canucks. Jake Virtanen, Olli Juolevi, and now Vasily Podkolzin dealt to the Edmonton Oilers for, at least it's Ottawa's fourth-round pick, because Ottawa's not going to be that competitive next year, and so it's It's better than if it was Edmonton's 4th round pick, because Edmonton is likely still going to be, one of the top teams in the West. But this one stings, Seth. I was actually at this draft, and I will say the highlight of this draft now was Nils Höglander in the 2nd round, which, hey, I'll take it. And the JT Miller trade, which was announced on the draft floor on day 2. But Vasily Podkolzin, it was funny. When he was drafted, a lot of people were saying low ceiling, high floor. I'm not sure if that's the case anymore. Now, played his first season in the National Hockey League and had some bright spots. I mean, 14 goals, 26 points in 79 games. Again, first year pro in North America. And then the next year played 30, split basically between Abbotsford and the Canucks, but and actually looked pretty good in Abbotsford for the AHL as well. This last season just, again, was sent down, didn't get an opportunity really after that. I think he had a cup of coffee coming up and down throughout the year due to injury. But this was kind of the dagger for the Canucks and their kind of last shot with him being like, okay, we've given you every opportunity to be that draft player, that draft pick, that top player that we hoped you'd be at 10, and it's just not working out. My biggest critique of this is the Abbotsford Canucks, nor the Canucks, the AHL team, nor the NHL team ever really gave him a proper look penalty killing. They just wanted offense from him, which he was a big frame who could skate and his hockey IQ is actually, it wasn't that bad. Like this, we're not talking Nail Yakupov level, hockey IQ here, lack thereof. So it was interesting that they didn't even try to mold that out of him, but alas, they move on from Vasily Podkolzin. There's not really a spot for him on the team right now. Anyways, and of course they trade him in division to the Edmonton Oilers, which again pisses me off as well. So anyways, those are the trades that I really just wanted to talk about here, Seth, before we end off the show, because you and I didn't have an opportunity to talk about the offer sheets on last episode. I added that towards the end of the show when I was recording the intros and outros. But before we get into the outcome, just what are your thoughts on how the St. Louis Blues played the game, so to speak? Because I think, and Hoppy was swooning over this, and now that I'm editing Terry Ryan's podcast again, everybody, humble plug, go check out Tales with TR, one of the best hockey storytellers, sports storytellers, in my opinion, even outside of hockey on the planet. You guys have heard him on Spit and Chicklets. You've heard his Barstool Sports stuff on YouTube. You can listen to him twice a week on his podcast, and yours truly is producing that show. But he even said that this is how this tool should be used, because it's a long shot. It's a long shot to get those big guys where you're having to give, basically mortgage the future to overpay a guy when you're offer sheeting, a top player. But when you're sending out an offer sheets in this case, like this, to guys who are on the come up, realistically, the deals aren't going to break the bank, and you're fucking over a team, a conference rival, not necessarily a division rival, but a conference rival nonetheless. I think it's beautiful. I think it's absolutely beautiful how Doug Armstrong was able to employ this.
My favorite part about it was hearing that had the Blues offered a single dollar more in AAV for either player, that the compensation for that player would have jumped up a full pick.
Exactly. Like they played the game to a T.
Yeah. And so if people are questioning like, oh, I don't know if this necessarily means that Doug Armstrong was, doing this or that, it's like literally $1 more, and it would have cost them a first and a second as opposed to a second and a third. The other thing too, St. Louis had to go get their, I think, 2nd round pick
from Pittsburgh.
Yeah. They had to go get, because the compensation for particular players on offer sheets has to be your original pick in that round. And so there was a lot that went into this. And St. Louis was like, we're going to, because it was pretty easy to see for Edmonton, like their roster is pretty stacked, pretty veteran heavy. But I think Holloway especially was a player that they viewed as a piece of their future, but they didn't have any money. Like, they didn't have any money to make those sorts of deals. Now on the defensive side with Broberg, that is clearly an overpay, but it's an overpay that netted them Holloway too. And for a Blues team that is kind of in the middle and trying to retool a little bit, makes total sense. I love it on both ends.
It is an overpay. I'm not going to deny that because we haven't seen if this guy's even going to reach his ceiling yet. Shoot, we haven't even seen if he's truly an NHL player yet. But it's not the worst gamble. And you said it there. It's like, okay, we're either getting a project of a defenseman still with the high ceiling and Dylan Holloway, who I think is there. I think he's an NHL player. And he's just going to get better. And we get Holloway. Like we either get a project guy with a high ceiling who's going to turn out to be better than the contract we gave him, and we get a basically sure thing in Dylan Holloway. For those who don't know the contracts, Dylan Holloway, the contract that Edmonton Oilers did not match. Had an AAV 2 years, 2 year contract, AAV $2.29 million. Philip Broberg, an AAV of $4.58 million again for 2 years. So 2 year deal each, which again, isn't bad, dude.
Yeah.
Isn't bad at all. If anything, it's a bridge for both of them, right? Again, you want to give bridge deals to guys who are going to be there. Like I'm pretty sure PK Subban's bridge deal was just over $4 million, if I'm not mistaken, back in the day. But again, that was almost a decade ago, right? Things changed. The cap is going up. The hockey world was shook when this went down.
Yeah. This was, you don't see offer sheets all the time. And, the first thing that I did when I saw that this was happening, I kind of thought like, oh boy, I hope nobody tries to pull that on the Wild with some of these restricted free agent prospects that they have coming up that'll be on the end of their ELCs. Because I had somebody ask, would some other team do this to try to get Jesper away from the Wilds? And my response was, I don't think the Wild would allow that to happen. Number one, like they would just do whatever it took to lock in Jesper to be part of the core.
And I know the Wild aren't in a good cap situation, but they're not in an Edmonton cap situation.
Yeah,
it's a different type of situation here.
Edmonton is substantially over the cap. Now they have players that they can put on long-term injured reserve to kind of alleviate that, but
and they have fucking superstar players that it's like, okay, I understand why you're paying these guys this much, and I understand the contract that Draisaitl is going to get, right? Like, I'm not. Mm-hmm. I understand why the Edmonton Oilers are in this. Where in the Wild they have a few players where you just kind of roll your eyes and you're like, okay, why did you make these deals? But again, the Minnesota Wild also have are still paying Parise and Suter, so just very different situations as you said there.
If now, unless it was a situation where somebody gave Jesper like $6.5 million per year on an offer sheet, then you might have a problem. But
I highly doubt that's going to happen, right? Because again, he's played less than friggin' Holloway and Broberg, and for a goaltender, you're not going to pay a goaltender $6 million, and you're not going to pay a goaltender $6 million when they played 2 games, 3 games,
then they got
whatever it is in the National Hockey League.
They got to be on the NHL roster the whole season, right? Or is it a standard one-way contract? That'd be an interesting question to kind of dive into. But I think a player like Jesper, I don't think is in any danger of that happening because the Wild would not, they would do what they needed to do to accommodate that. Which is why I think you see a lot of these extensions that they work on happen before this sort of thing can even become a possibility.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I don't think people are going to pick on the Wild like they're picking on the Edmonton Oilers too.
No. It's like, hey,
because also the Wild aren't a threat like the Oilers are right now, right? I think that matters a little bit. I know everyone thinks all the GMs and owners are kumbaya, but like it's not. I know this isn't boxing. To of course I had to bring combat sports into this a little bit. I know this ain't boxing, but there's still the game within the game for the GMs as well.
Exactly.
on the ice, I mean, Kevin Bieksa talks about it all the time, the game within the game, but these GMs too, man, they're ruthless.
Yeah.
And some of these owners too, no, I'm not saying that like the Blues and Edmonton have a lot of beef, but like there are some owners out there who love to fuck each other over. I mean, the owner of the Dallas Stars and the Aquilinis, the Vancouver Canucks, they hate each other, dude. They if they can help it, they won't even be in the same room as each other. Because the Dallas Stars, I believe he also owns it's either the Kelowna Rockets. I believe it's the Kelowna Rockets here. Let me just do some research on the fly here. But anyways, when the Canucks are up for sale over a decade ago, that ownership group was in the bidding to get the Vancouver Canucks BC guy, right? BC, British Columbia, Canada guy as well.
Yeah.
And the Aquilini family outbid him, and it was messy.
Oh,
it was a very messy bidding war for the Vancouver Canucks. And they have, I believe his name's Tom Goularty. They've hated each other since, dude. It has not been good. So, like, yeah, NEJ, Tom Goularty, there is no like court. There's no respect between those guys. There's no respect between those guys.
I want more petty wars. Just keep them coming.
Yeah. Now, is it the Kelowna Rockets that he owns? I'm pretty sure it's Kelowna. But it's not even saying on Google. But regardless, he owns a WHL team as well.
Okay.
Kamloops Blazer. That's it.
Kamloops.
I was gonna say it was either Kamloops or Kelowna, but yeah, Kamloops Blazers. That's what. And I'm pretty sure Ginla also has ownership stake in them now. Jerome.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, because he used to play there as well. Even though his son's playing for the Rockets, or played for the Rockets and playing for the Rockets. But anyways, all right, we've gone even well over an hour here, Seth. We had a lot crazy in mid-August, but we had a lot to talk about this week, and I'm like I said, I'm glad that we didn't get to record on the weekend and pushed it later this week, because there was just so much more to unpack with everything that's going on with the NCAA, the offer sheets, trades. That is right, trades, and Patrick Laine, of all people, being traded this week as well. And look at that, icing on the cake with a little story there with Kaprizov.
It's like the heart monitor for NHL news was just flatline up until like Monday, and then all of a sudden you get the beep, beep, beep.
Yeah. And shoot, with trades happening today, Wednesday, the time of this recording, and this will drop sometime, or Thursday anyways, the time of this recording. Shoot, I can't even keep track this week. This will likely come out Friday or Saturday, but still, even on Thursday here, there's still movement in the National Hockey League. So yeah, we'll see what happens next week. We'll see if it plateaus again for the rest of the off season. But like you said, only a few weeks left until preseason, so things are going to start heating up again here soon. Yeah, that's it. What do you got coming up on Locked On?
Well, the big thing is just Sunday's live show. So I'll do a little plug for that again. Live show on Sunday from noon to 3 at Zamboni's on 7th. So stop by if you are curious to meet some of your favorite Minnesota Wild podcasters, Lockdown Wild personalities. We've got a full lineup for you coming up on Sunday from 12 to 3. So stop by and say hello. It should be a great time, and looking forward to just kind of getting us ready for Labor Day weekend and then into the month of September. And after that, preseason right around the corner.
Absolutely. And check out the Friday edition of Locked On Wild. I appeared there with Seth, and it was a fun one. It was a fun one. Not only did we create a super team with Central Division players, but we also talked a little prospect talk and a little bit about Riley Heidt and the Wild's roster situation going into preseason as well. As always, Seth, thank you very much, guys. We'll wrap up the show on the other side. As always, big shout out and a big thank you to our friend and yours, Seth Toupal from Locked On Wild. Check out my appearance on the show Locked On Wild on YouTube or the podcast side every Friday. And a big shout out to everybody who joined Seth at Zamboni's on Sunday for his live show, and everybody who tuned into that show, be sure to check it out on the Locked On podcast feed and the Locked On YouTube channel, the Locked On Wild podcast feed and Locked On Wild YouTube channel. I was just completely out of commission on Sunday. I had actually planned to join and contribute as well, but swamped with catching up on some work on Sunday, and that mixed with 14 hours straight of streaming combat sports commentary and having literally no sleep. Like I said, I went into bed for like a 2-hour nap at 5:30 a.m. Woke up at like 7:30, started working, and by the time 11 hit and the show started at 12, I was in no frame of mind to be hosting or guest hosting on a live show. So I told Seth I'd make up for it on the next one. But I encourage you guys to go check that out as well. All right, last thing I want to get into here before we wrap up the show. We got another Hoppy Hour for you guys. Yes, that is right. We have another Hoppy Hour for you guys here. If you're listening on the podcast side, I will give a short little audio rundown on the beer, but if you're watching on YouTube, and I encourage everybody who's listening to the podcast to go check us out on YouTube, as the full episode is posted on YouTube. And if you want the full experience of the podcast, especially this segment, the Hoppy Hour, then I encourage you to check us out on YouTube, as you get a extended vlog and beer tasting and review on the video side of things. So before we get to the Hoppy Hour, I just want to give a big shout out to our friends at Better Edge. That is right. Better Edge is a free platform with legal betting in the state of Minnesota, among 44 other states. We will be back hosting a ton of game day pick'em competitions for the Minnesota Wild, bracket tournaments, you name it, throughout this sports season coming up. So make sure to follow myself on the platform at VI Sports Talk, Hoppy, and the Sota Pod as well. And if you haven't tried out the platform and betting app yet, what are you waiting for? Go to betteredge.com/sotapod, as we have a gift for you. That is right, $20 to play around with. A $20 sign up bonus from yours truly, the Sota Pod, at betteredge.com/sotapod. If you're already an active user of the app and you want to get more out of Better Edge, you can become a premium player. Premium players have access to free entry to premium pick'em contests, order grades, advanced order filterings, API access, and more. More details at betteredge.com/premium. But if you're not signed up yet, again, what are you waiting for? Take our free money. betteredge.com/sotapod. Collect your $20 signing bonus and start checking out this awesome app, which was created locally, by the way. Great local company, awesome people. Better Edge, go check that out. On the other side, final segment of the show, we have for you another Hoppy Hour.
First, I'd like to propose a toast to UMD goaltender Alex Stalock. To Stalock! To Stalock!
I love that stuff. Been drinking it for years. You know, I heard they recently decided to add more hops to it.
You're all hopped out?
Shh. It's a secret. My roommate's cat. She loves me the most.
Millie, do you love me the most? Do you love me the most? What was that? That's what I thought. Millie, do I have to keep it a secret? Okay.
Told you. Y'all better keep that secret. Back for another edition of the Hoppy Hour, ladies and gentlemen, and we have a banger here on tap today. Another IPA from one of the best breweries out of Minnesota, in St. Paul, my friends and yours, Barrel Through.
I spent 40 hours on the road, more than 1,000 miles from Chicago. I'll never get used to this freezing cold, but the weather's warm outside and told me, yeah, I spent 40 hours on the road, leaning with my head on the window. I swear that I heard Austin say hello. Maybe one day you can call this place
Keeping Secrets Hazy IPA with Citra T90. What is this, mixed with fucking Terminator parts?
I'll be back.
I'll be back, motherfucker. Citra T90, Motueka Cryo, and HBC 586 hops? Bro, this is coming in at 7.2%. We're gonna pour this shit up. Love me some hazy IPAs. The last Barrel Theory hazy IPA that we featured, that we reviewed, that we tasted here on this segment was outstanding. If you're new to this channel, if you're new to this segment, the Hoppy Hour, be sure to like and subscribe. We're gonna pour this shit up, then we're gonna taste it, I'm gonna review it, and we're gonna see what you, the community, have to say about it on Untapped. I will also rate it on Untapped as well. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The matching glass, no less. Oh. Oh my god, as I was pouring this up, like, it smells like a juice bomb. That's crazy. From the moment I cracked it, it's sweet. It's I'm excited for this one. Keeping Secrets. Let's get it. How are you with the perfect pour, too? Oh my god, this is a juice bomb. The whole bar in my house here smells like a juice bomb of a hazy IPA right now. Again, we have the Keeping Secrets Hazy IPA. Like I said, there's a lot of big words on this one to describe it. Citra T90 plus Motueka Cryo and HBC 586 hops. So what the hell are these hops that I'm talking about here? Because these are very unique and kind of hipster-ass terms and hops I'm throwing around here. So, upon doing a little bit of research, the Motueka Cryo, and I'm probably butchering that name, is actually a dual-purpose hop used in all hop additions throughout the brewing process. It has specific aroma descriptors that include fresh crushed citrus, mojito lime, lively lemon, and lime tones with a little bit of tropical fruit as well. So a lot in that little hop. The CBC 586 is out of Yakima Valley hops, and it's an experimental hop variety between Hop Breeding Company, John Haas, and Yakima Chief Ranches. Finally, Terminator 90, T90, is just a citrus forward hop. So there's a lot going on here, ladies and gentlemen. Look at this perfect foam right here. Oh my god. Look at that. Gorgeous. Look at how hazy and tropical looking this thing is. Oh my god. I just want to... I didn't get any of the beer that was all foam. Damn, creamy though, like creamsicle. Like I got just a little hint of that off the foam, and it almost tastes like an orange creamsicle. So I imagine this is gonna be citrusy. I imagine this is gonna be a citrus juice bomb, but it's a secret, ladies and gentlemen. It's a secret. The can art on point. It's amazing. Signature type of label that Barrel Theory always has. It's kind of a flashy, holographic label with their signature black line on the bottom. As you can see, everything there with their awesome logo. One of the best breweries in Minnesota, one of the best breweries in St. Paul. And like I said in the last video, I ain't talking them up because they they sponsor one of my podcasts on the Sota Pod side of things. Shout out to Fellowship of the Rink. They are amazing. I know one of the owners pretty well. Timmy's a beauty. And you know that their beer is good because they actually sell their beer at the XL Energy Center for Minnesota Wild games. So if you want to pick up a crowler, be sure to get there early. Bang for your buck. It's a better deal, both on the alcohol percentage side and on the dollar side, than you spending $17 for a fucking McGolden. Not that there's anything wrong with McGoldens. Anyways, I've talked enough. Let's taste this. I'm going to give my live reaction, and then we will rate it on Untapped and see what you, the community, think of this one as well. Is it better than the Chaz Michaels? We're about to find out. This out of the way. Keeping Secrets, 7.2%. Cheers, everybody. Damn, that's hazy. Whoa, whoa. Oh God. Okay, so that's a hazy bitch. It's a lot thicker than the Chaz Michaels as well. There's a lot going on here. Man, definitely tropical, not sweet at all. Like, not even a little bit. And you know what? This is dangerous because there's hardly a bite to it. It's like all of those hops together make a very smooth, yet thick, just citrus beer. Almost a juicy citrus beer that doesn't have a very bitter aftertaste or a sweet impact upon your first taste. God, that's too refreshing. That's too refreshing for how, like, complex it is. Because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of, like, oh, okay, I'm kind of getting that little bit of lime. I mean, it's exactly how I described given what hops are used with this. There's a little tropical flavor to it. There's a hint of that mojito. It's citrusy as hell, but it's not very bitter. Even that aftertaste, I'm going... There's not a lot of lingering bitterness that a lot of strong hazy IPAs tend to give you. Yet by the look and how I described it, like a lot thicker, less clear as I described the Chaz Michaels as. God, there's a lot going on, but it's so balanced. It's so balanced, and I really like this. I like this because I know the other one I said wasn't as sweet, and I hate to keep drawing comparisons, but we just recently reviewed that one on the channel. I love this. I love this because though it's a little bit more bland on the sweet side of things, I love how these hops complement each other so well. I love that just hint of mojito, and it's almost the scent of the tropical flavors, that juice bomb that kind of throws you off a little bit because you expect it to be sweet as it hits the nose. Like, it smells sweeter than it tastes, guys. It smells sweeter than it tastes. How is that even possible? Science, motherfuckers. That must be the secret. Wow. Oh my God. It's gonna fill up my stomach quickly because it is thick. Not rich, but it is thick. But I would say that this is insanely balanced, not bitter, not sweet, but has so many hints of flavors that it's incredibly refreshing despite being a high percentage hazy IPA. Wow! This is incredible. This is incredible. I love this not because it's simple tasting, but because it's so well balanced and it kind of plays mind games with you for how sweet it smells, yet how balanced with all the subtle flavors it is upon tasting it. Let's see what you guys said on Untapped, and I will give my official rating and review. We'll snap a quick picture for Untapped. Again, follow me on Untapped at VI Sports Talk. All right, let's see what the community on Untapped has to say about this one. Reminder, nobody gives 5 out of 5 for beers. If you give anything 4 and above, it means it's an incredible beer. If you're giving anything like 4.5 out of 5, it better be the best beer you've ever had because the community takes our ratings seriously, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see what you folks had to say. So, it got an average rating of 4.09 out of 5. That's with 154 ratings. I have 2 friends who have tried this. One of them gave it a 3.75. One of them gave it a 4. Now, it's described from the brewery's profile to have grapefruit peel, bitter, dank, and grapefruity. Now, I definitely have the grapefruit and grapefruit peel. I even added orange and just citrus forward to mine as well. I don't think it's that dank, and I don't think it's that bitter, to be perfectly honest. And maybe it's just because I've been having more bitter, more dank IPAs recently, and this one just is not that in comparison. I will concede that that could be the case. I found this one a lot more smooth, and I like that. So as I'm scrolling through here, 4.25, 3.75, 4.5, 3.5, okay, 3.75, 4.25, 4, 4, a lot of 4s, 4.25. So it's funny that there's a few people who rated it 3.75, which one of my friends, who I really respect his opinion, some of you may know him as the State of Hoppy, and some people have 3.5, which I think brought down the rating a little bit. One person has it 4.4, wow, but mostly 4s and 4.25s, which I expect from Barrel Theory, let's be perfectly honest. Now, my rating of this bad boy, one more sip before I let you guys know. One more chug before I let you guys know. 4 out of 5, ladies and gentlemen. And I described it as insanely balanced. Thick, smells like a juice bomb, yet all the fancy hops complement each other to make it refreshing and delicious. Not super hoppy, not super sweet, amazing. And it's funny because my flavor profile on this one doesn't match everyone's. Like I said, I have a grapefruit peel, grapefruity, orange, blood orange, balanced, and there was no mojito, so I had to write minty, which might throw everybody off a little bit. I'm kind of hoping that Barrel Theory, the account, because they always like/toast every post I make about them. I'm kind of hoping that they leave a comment and go, minty? What the hell? And I'm simply gonna say, well, there wasn't a hint of mojito tag for my flavor profile. Is this the best beer that I've had at Barrel Theory? No. Out of the Chaz Michaels and this, I personally like this hazy IPA a little bit better, but I totally understand why and how people would like the Chaz Michaels a little bit more. By the way, we have one more hazy IPA from our friends at Barrel Theory to try in the next few weeks here, so it will be dropping soon. But I just like how, despite how complex this may seem, it's definitely keeping a secret, because how the hell do all these crazy hops turn something into an insanely balanced and refreshing beer that doesn't just punch you in the face with sweetness, that doesn't just punch you in the face. I really just punched myself in the face there. With hops. This was awesome. This was awesome. Sometimes it doesn't need to be rich of flavors, rich with sweetness, and insanely hoppy to be good. And that's coming from someone who likes West Coast IPAs more than any other IPA. This is the type of hazy IPA that I want to drink, ladies and gentlemen. I am incredibly impressed with this one, and it's fucking Barrel Theory, so I shouldn't be surprised with how good these beers are anymore. 4 out of 5, that was my rating. Let me know if you've tried this one before in the comments below. Like and subscribe. And as always, if you like this series, let me know. Give a thumbs up on YouTube. And as always, let me know what beers, what style of beers, hell, what type of liquors and tier lists you want me to do in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers, everybody. Shout out to Barrel Theory, crushing it again. See how much she loves me? Say hi, Millie. All right. I know you want to be in the video. She gone.
Again, I'm more of a West Coast IPA guy, but these hazy IPAs from Barrel Theory, god damn, they are amazing. Don't forget, at the XL Energy Center, they are selling crowlers there as well. Based on the percentage of the beer, based on how much beer you get, it is a way better deal than buying 2 McGoldens. Just saying. Be sure to get there early though, as they sell out quick. But that is it for the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your patience this week as we took 1 week off of the podcast. Now, quickly, the show is likely going to be moving to the end of the week versus the beginning of the week. Judd's Buds is moving to Monday for streaming now. All of you who are used to watching the streams on Wednesdays, 6:30 p.m. Central Time all last season, the schedule is now being moved to Monday. So Judd's Buds, a live show every Monday, now at 5:30 p.m. Central Time, starting today as you're listening to this on Monday. Again, reminder, Judd's Buds live streams on YouTube. The Sota Pod YouTube channel will be Mondays at 5:30 p.m. Central now moving forward. And as a result, the Sota Pod will be recorded a little less frequently. Now, that's not to say that I'm not going to try to give you guys an episode every single week, but we have so many shows now under our little network, under our umbrella that is the Sota Pod, that if it's a busy week and the boys cover everything that Seth and I want to talk about anyways, unless we have differing opinions or something else to add, we might just keep the skates on the shelf. But for the most part, we will be keeping the show as regular as possible. But if you miss, like if there's 1 week like last week where there's no show, don't panic. Don't panic. The show isn't going anywhere. It just might be a little less frequent than, every week dropping on Monday, every week dropping on YouTube. But that's not to say that I'm getting lazy. That's not to say that we aren't going to make an effort every single week to put out a podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We just don't want to say the same things over and over again, especially if we have the same opinions as some of the other hosts on the show. We have yet a new show starting and dropping mid-September as well. More details on that very, very soon. I teased it a little bit on Seth's podcast last week on Locked On Wild that I will be hosting and producing. And quite frankly, just so you guys know, as I pull back the curtains, I produce the audio of every single podcast on our network. That's Fellowship of the Rink, Judd's Buds, the Sota Pod, MNCAA that's coming back, and now this new show. So between that, my day job, and streaming 35 plus hours every weekend on my personal channel, the City Life Project, I only have so much time, right? I only have so much time, and I gotta fucking sleep sometime throughout the week, right? So again, not saying that we're putting this show on the shelf. That is not the case. We've actually been growing this last year since we started, well, not even since we started collaborating with Seth, but since we've honestly been putting the show on YouTube, and the collaboration with Seth has been awesome as we've been able to kind of grow both of our listeners, both of our communities, both the Locked On Wild side and the Sota Pod. So I just want to give a big thank you to everyone who's been supporting us throughout almost 400 episodes of the Sota Pod podcast. Now I know it's kind of gone with me solo, to me and Hoppy, to then me solo, and now me with Seth. Look, we're not going anywhere. We're still going to be producing episodes. We are still going to be posting these full episodes on YouTube. Just know that if we miss a week, look, there's so much content coming on our channel. There's so much content on our podcast feed that it just means that it was a busy freaking week, and I just didn't have anything else to add to the news around the Minnesota Wild and or the National Hockey League. But again, and I'll hammer this home one more time, that's not to say that we are taking a step back or retiring the show. We just have, if anything, more stuff coming your way. And this guy can only produce so much throughout the week. There's only 24 hours in the day, which I wish there were more. Trust me, I wish there were more. But just wanted to let you guys know that. And I wanted to give a big thank you to everyone who's been supporting the show. Literally, the show has grown from just a dinky little podcast with me talking about the Wild and the NHL twice a week back in, 2017 or 2018, to now a freaking network with amazing co-hosts like Spoked Z, everyone who covers college, Seth. We got Brett Marshall joining us from Sound the Foghorn as well for his own show. And of course, Joe Smith from The Athletic, Wild beat writer. It's tremendous to see the growth from pretty much nothing to now, like I said, a little network covering everything Minnesota hockey, as well as National Hockey League news as well. So for everyone who's been here from the start, for everyone who's been supporting us for the last few years, thank you so much. And to all our new listeners and all our new viewers on YouTube, thank you guys for helping us grow, for helping us become what we are today. A really cool little network. So, and soon to be big network, ladies and gentlemen. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for the support. And that's going to do it for the show. If you're tuning in on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, you guys are the OGs. If you haven't left us a rating and review yet, please do so. It just helps us get in front of more listeners. And if you're on YouTube, always remember to smash the like button on all the videos that you watch. Leave a comment and subscribe. By leaving a comment and liking, you do the same. You help just as much on that platform as those on the audio side of things on their podcast apps who rate and review. You get us in front of more ears by rating and reviewing on the podcast side of things. You help the algorithm on YouTube and get us in front of more eyes and ears on the YouTube side of things if you like and comment. So thank you to everybody who does that. And if you haven't already, please do so, especially on this video that you're watching now. But anyways, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is it. I feel like we've gone over all the housekeeping notes. We've caught up. All right, time to get to work. Signing off, I'm Misha Drome alongside Seth Toupal. This has been the Sota Pod presented by Better Edge, 7th Avenue Pizza, Northland Vodka, and Waggle Golf. Don't fear, just drink some beer and stay wild.